The UFC is finally back for its first pay-per-view in 2023 this weekend. UFC 283 is taking place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, with the main card kicking off at 10 p.m. Eastern. Before we get into the fights, it's important to note that this is the UFC's first time back in Brazil since March 14, 2020. It's the first pay-per-view of the year, and what a card it is, topped by a championship doubleheader between bantamweight champion Deiveson Figueiredo, an interim champ Brandon Moreno, and Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira for the vacant light heavyweight belt. Let's start by first talking about the bantamweight matchup. The series between Figgy and Moreno could not be more even as it stands, at one win apiece and a draw between them. Back in December 2020 at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, the two fighters came together for the first time in the UFC 256 main event. After going the full 25, the judges' scorecards produced a majority draw, resulting in Figueiredo retaining the title due to the champion's advantage. The rematch was scheduled for UFC 263, and Moreno didn't leave it up to the judges, sinking in a third-round rear-naked choke submission to become the new champion at 125 pounds. This fight was the most convincing in terms of wins, despite a few knockdowns by Figgy in the follow-up rematch. The fighters then rematched again for the third time last year, with Deiveson getting the better of Moreno on the scorecard. Heading into their fourth fight at UFC 283, Moreno is the taller man by 2 inches and has a 2-inch reach advantage. Discounting his fights with Figgy, Moreno hasn't lost a fight since a 2018 decision to Alexandre Pantoja, and discounting his fights with Moreno, Figgy hasn't lost since a decision loss in 2019 against Jussier Formiga. There have been reports that following this fight, Figueiredo is going to head up to bantamweight, and regardless of how legitimate these claims are, judging by some of the pictures of Figgy heading into the weigh-ins, he doesn't look like he could lose much more weight than he already has. Since missing weight by 2.5 pounds in his title fight against Joseph Benavidez, Figueiredo has seemingly dialed in his weight cut, and the cut doesn't seem to noticeably affect his performance. In the embeddeds, Moreno looks like his typical, relaxed and easygoing self, so it seems that only time will tell what the outcome this weekend holds. The bookmakers currently have this fight as a pick'em, and at the time of recording, Moreno is the slight favourite. Who do you see winning this matchup, and do you expect the fight to go the distance? Now to the main event, a light heavyweight bout between Glover Teixeira and Jamal Hill for the vacant light heavyweight belt. This fight follows in the wake of some interesting circumstances at 205 pounds, as former champ Jan Blachowicz and contender Magomed Ankalaev drew for the vacant belt at UFC 282. Dana White was visibly annoyed during the post-fight press conference at what, in his view, was a lackluster fight. In fairness to Jan and Magomed, Jan was kicking the paint off Magomed's legs and fighting a great technical fight, which led to Magomed changing up the game plan and playing top control for the later rounds. Both fighters wanted to win, and the later rounds weren't the most entertaining to watch. That said, it is strange then for two new fighters to be thrown into the mix for a vacant belt, but that's what we have between Glover and Jamal this weekend. Glover is looking to regain the belt that he almost held on to in a crazy back-and-forth fight against Jiri Prochazka at UFC 275, losing by a no-hooks-in choke in the last minute of the 5th round. Jamal is looking to cement his status as a top 205-pounder, following a string of KOs against worthy opponents like Thiago Santos, a wild knockout against Johnny Walker, and Jimmy Crute. When looking at who will come out on top, there are a few things I would like to highlight. The first is the grappling and submission advantage of Glover. Jamal had his arm snapped in his UFC 263 loss against Paul Craig. And while Craig pulled guard instead of going the traditional route of taking Jamal down and is a BJJ savant from his back, this loss is a great sign for Glover's chances of winning by sub. Another factor you need to pair this with is Glover's durability. He was getting tagged against Anthony Smith before dragging him into hell for the rest of the fight. He took some massive shots against Thiago Santos before getting the W, and he absorbed some major damage against Jiri in his last fight and kept going to the last minute. Summing up, Jamal Hill's chances are that he tags Glover clean and puts him away, likely very early. If Glover can avoid Jamal's power shots early, he will likely drag him into his world and either sub him or sit on top and make him wish he was being subbed. The bookmakers are edging towards Glover not being able to take Jamal's shots and have opened with Jamal as the favourite. If I was a betting man, I would look long and hard at Teixeira by KO, given the value. How do you see this matchup going? Do you think it will get out of the first round? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for this video. Enjoy the first UFC pay-per-view of the year and the 2 huge title fights that are taking place on it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Undisputed MMA for more analysis and daily news, and hit the bell icon to be notified when new content gets posted.